Welcome, football fans, to another episode of the WCC Grid Talk. As you know, I'm your host, Mateo, alongside with my co-host, Joe, and thank you for joining. So, we're coming back from a holiday weekend.
Hallelujah! Holy Where's the Tylenol?
It was a very good holiday weekend. Joe, how was yours?
I had a very good Christmas, Mateo. Had to spend a lot of time with family. Got to have some good dinner, some good food. It was just all around a good Christmas. What about yours?
Yeah, it was a great Christmas. You know, I come from an Italian family, so we believe in eating fish and only fish for Christmas dinner. And so we had the works all out there. I made a wonderful crab sauce, which I take a great pride in. But before we get into this, we would like to thank all of our listeners for continuing to support us on the podcast. And if you haven't yet, please find and follow us on all of our social media platforms, which you can find right down here. If you haven't yet, we also do now have a Discord account. So you can find us on Discord at WCC Grid Talk. So go ahead and hop in the Discord where you can go ahead and talk football history, and just meet a bunch of people and talk all about this season and how this playoff is going to end up going to be looking moving forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's dig into this. And I want to start off with the Thursday night game between the New Orleans Saints and the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams ended up making a statement in this game. This was a big win for them. Okay, they end up winning this game 30-22 against New Orleans, keeping them in the playoff spot. They now currently hold a wild card spot, which they already were holding after week 15, but they're holding on to it now with this win, and it makes all the difference. So Rams are really coming into their own, and if they can continue to go on this run, I mean, just by looking at their schedule, they've got the Giants coming up in week 17, and then they've got San Francisco, which is going to be a tough matchup in week 18. But if they could end up pulling off both of those victories, we could be looking at the Rams making a wild card spot and moving themselves into the playoffs.
Yeah, the Rams have the talent to get there. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I mean, with Puka and Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford actually playing somewhat decent ball right now. And you have some very obviously well-known names on that defense as well. You know, the Rams have the firepower when it comes to the names to get into this playoff and potentially upset a team in the playoffs as well. So I'm looking at the box score right now. It looks like Stafford had an awesome game with 328 passing yards for 2 touchdown passes. Puka Nacua continues his hot streak this season with 9 receptions for 164 yards. Talk about a diamond in the rough that they found in the draft there with Puka Nacua, man. He is a force to be reckoned with in this league and has really taken over that wide receiver 1 position from Cooper Kupp. Obviously, it's because Cooper Kupp was injured and Puka stepped in and ran with it. So Rams are definitely playing good ball right now. I fully expect them to continue to battle to get into the playoffs right now. I'm looking at their strength of schedule. Sitting in the middle of the field, they're sitting at 13th easiest or 13th hardest remaining schedule. They still have San Francisco. They still have the Giants. Obviously, San Francisco is coming off a pretty disappointing loss to the Ravens. Giants have upset some teams this season, so they're definitely not going to be a walkover, but expect the Rams to sneak into the playoffs in either the 6th or the 7th spot.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. And going into Puka, man, you're right. He's just playing some really great football, and I think he's definitely in the conversation for Rookie of the Year award.
I mean, 100%. If he doesn't get it, I mean, who else is even to be considered at this point?
Yeah,
he's playing that well right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, so that was our Thursday night game, but then we end up moving over to Saturday. So there was a doubleheader, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and then Buffalo and the Chargers. Now, Pittsburgh ended up steamrolling over Cincinnati, 34-11. Buffalo and the Chargers, that ultimately was a pretty decent game, but Buffalo ended up walking away with the win on that one, and they're kind of in a hot streak right now. End up beating the Chargers 24-22, and this is the first game that the Chargers ended up playing without Brandon Staley. So, Chargers season just hasn't really gone great. Okay, so we can go ahead and we can end up stepping away from the conversation about the Chargers. It doesn't look great for them. But moving on to Buffalo, Buffalo's remaining schedule right now, they have New England next week and are 12.5-point favorites. And then they end up moving over.
Miami.
Yeah, then they've got Miami in week 18. And that's going to be a tough matchup for them. Now, the way that the playoffs are currently standing right now, the Bills are currently 9-6, holding on to that number 6 seed. With the victory over New England, that'll put them at 10-6. And if for whatever reason they end up losing to Miami, they'll end the season at 10-7. Joe, do you think that's going to be enough for the Bills to continue to hold on to that 6 seed spot?
Well, first off, I think the Bills are playing phenomenal football right now, and I think they're making the playoffs. I think they have not only a great shot of making the playoffs. Miami, you're looking at Miami's schedule. Miami has the second hardest remaining schedule in football. They play the Ravens week 17, and then they play the Bills week 18. Now, if Miami loses to the Ravens, who are coming off a very impressive win over the 49ers, really solidifying themselves as the Super Bowl favorites right now, in my eyes. If Ravens take care of the Dolphins, and the Bills take care of the Patriots, correct? The Patriots, like we assume they are going to, that's going to lead to a Week 18 game that will decide the AFC East. Whoever wins that game at that point is going to win the AFC East. Right now, Buffalo has the tiebreaker against Miami because they beat them in week 4, 48-20. So Bills have actually a great shot, or not, I wouldn't say a great shot, a pretty good shot at actually winning the AFC East. And who would have ever thought that the way they started this season and how Miami was playing at the beginning of the season? I'm actually shocked that they have a chance to win the AFC East. They're playing phenomenal football, and I could actually see it happening.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it does seem like a real possibility that the Bills could end up actually taking this. And that's going to make some really exciting football come Week 18. If Miami does not win that game, Week 17 against the Ravens, who, by the way, are potential Super Bowl contenders, okay, with their game win over the San Francisco 49ers, okay? A phenomenal 49ers team, and they steamrolled over them. But if the Dolphins lose to the Ravens, that Week 18 game is going to be a really exciting game. Definitely something for the books. I'm almost kind of hoping for it to actually play out that way. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Not to mention though, going into that game, the Ravens against Miami next week, Ravens are not have not clinched their they're sitting at 12-3 right now. Browns are 10-5. They could potentially there is some questionable records there as well. So Ravens have to go into this game with the intention of winning and not just being able to take it easy and prep for the playoffs. So I fully expect the Ravens to go into to take on Miami and win that game. And like you just said, it's going to set up for some very exciting football Week 18.
Correct. All right. Well, until then, we got to get through Week 17. But let's go ahead and let's move on to the Sunday games, Christmas Eve games. All right. So first, I want to start off with the Green Bay Packers game. Okay. So the Packers end up walking away with a win. Okay. 33-30. against the Carolina Panthers. The Green Bay Packers beat the Carolina Panthers 33-30. This Carolina Panthers team is now 2-13. Going into this game, they were 2-12. Okay? And the Green Bay Packers only won this game by 3 points. And that right there was even questionable that they were going to win this game, because after Anders Carlson kicks a field goal with 14 seconds left in the game, the Panthers get the ball back and they go 44 yards to try to spike the ball and miss it by half a second to put themselves in a game tying situation to kick a field goal. Okay? I don't know how I feel about this win. I don't know how I feel about this win. A win is a win, okay? And that's what Green Bay needed. Green Bay needed the win. And Green Bay is also going to need another 2 wins this next upcoming week against the Minnesota Vikings, and then final week 18 against the Chicago Bears. They're going to need these wins. But Matt LaFleur ended up saying in his press conference that this game fell more on the offense than it did the defense. Excuse me? 33 points? Can you believe what I'm saying right now, Joe? I mean, 33 points the Green Bay Packers put up, but somehow it's the offense's fault.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. He's just not shooting straight from the hip as far as like being real about what's going on. You know, I understand what he's doing. He's the head coach. He's trying to take accountability to protect his staff. But when you score 33 points and you say that it's the offensives, that this close game falls on the offense, and that they barely squeaked out the victory because of the offense, or because they should have put up more points, like that's ridiculous. Joe Barry needs to be gone. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like this Green Bay Packer defense is not playing good, which is completely it's sad to see considering how good they were playing at the beginning of this season. The Packers are not playing good football right now. They're coming a couple of weeks, when they beat Kansas City Chiefs, and they beat the Detroit Lions, to going against weak opponents, losing to a couple weak opponents, and then barely beating a 2-12 Panthers team. Like, this Packers team has fallen off a cliff, and with only a 24% chance to make it into the playoffs now, it doesn't look good for them at all.
Yeah, it's not looking pretty for them. So this is the NFC playoff picture right now. And you can see that the Green Bay Packers are currently 10th in the hunt. So they are still in the hunt. And by the ways of looking at it, the only way for the Green Bay Packers to make it into the playoffs now would be to win out games against Minnesota and Chicago. And what they're going to need is a little help from the Rams or the Seahawks. Rams or Seahawks need to lose one of their next 2 games. It doesn't seem like it's pretty far-fetched off, but I mean, by looking at Seattle's remaining schedule, Seattle has Pittsburgh in week 17 and Arizona in week 18. And the way that Seattle's playing currently right now, I could see them winning out the rest of the season. Okay. The Rams, on the other hand, as we ended up going over, the Rams have the Giants in week 17 and then San Francisco in week 18. The Giants could end up being a win for the Rams, okay? But that could end up being iffy. We'll see where it ends up going. I mean, recent news has ended up indicating that Tommy DeVito is now not going to be starting, and they're getting ready to put in Tyrod Taylor as a starting quarterback. But who knows what that ends up meaning, okay? But by the way that the Rams have been playing and what's kind of iffy going on in New York, I think the Rams should be able to walk away with a victory there. As far as for the 49ers game, it's a divisional week 18 game, and San Francisco's currently holding on to that number 1 seed. But the Eagles are right behind them, as well as the Lions. So they are going to continue to push and continue to grind to remain within that number one seed to get that first round bye. If the 49ers could beat the Rams and Green Bay does win out, then Green Bay could be looking at a playoff spot. But Green Bay's got to win out. And by the way that this defense has looked the last couple of weeks, I'm not sure how I feel about it either. I'm just throwing the scenario out there, but this is kind of where we're at. And so we can hope for the best, but it's not looking pretty right now.
Yeah, we're talking about the other teams losing their games in order to give us a chance to win, and I understand the sentiment, and I understand that is what needs to happen. But the way the Packers are playing, I don't see them winning either one of their remaining games. I don't see them beating the Bears, and I don't see them beating the Minnesota Vikings. They are playing terrible football right now. The defense is playing terrible. Yes, we've had a lot of injuries throughout the season, but that's not an excuse. I hate to say it. That's not an excuse to use, especially when you come off victories against the Lions and the Chiefs. Like, what happened to that team? That team is no longer here. That team is gone. I don't know what happened to it. But the way the Packers have been playing the last 3 weeks, we don't beat the Bears and we don't beat the Minnesota Vikings, and we miss out on the playoffs like we all thought we would from the beginning of the season. The Packers gave us a little bit of hope there in the middle of the season, but have fallen short. Again, I don't see the Packers beating the Bears or Minnesota at this point.
Oh, no.
Offensively, I think we're in pretty good shape right now. I do. I mean, you look at our offense, and our offense has really stepped into their own. Jaden Reed has really started to become almost that number one wide receiver. Christian Watson, before he ended up getting hurt, started to step into his own. We know we've got Romeo Doubs. And then on top of it all, Dontavian Wicks has really started to step into his own. So you look at our wide receiver core, and they're all looking great. Jordan Love, his numbers this year are just looking great. He's up there with all of the top contending quarterbacks in this league. So there's a lot of things to be excited for. The only thing that's going to be interesting to see is what ends up happening in this offseason, because one of my big concerns is what the plan is for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Those are my two players that I'm not sure what's going to end up happening this year, this upcoming offseason. Aaron Jones dealt with a lot of injuries this year, and A.J. Dillon kind of stepped into his own, but I don't necessarily know how comfortable I would feel with him just being our number one back. Personnel change is what I think is going to be most important on the defensive side of things. And Jair Alexander, I know a lot of news reports have been out there that he hasn't necessarily been happy with what's been happening on the defensive side of things. But with the personnel change, could we possibly see Jair for another year? That's, I guess, the next big question. So I'm excited to see where we can go from there. As of right now, I'm not going to give up hope on the Green Bay Packers yet. There still is a chance, but I don't know necessarily what that chance is going to do for us.
Well, I'm not saying that I'm not going to root for the Packers, because I'm going to. At this point in the season, based on where they're at, it would be beneficial to actually make the playoffs. They've ruined their chances of a top pick. So yeah, go out there and try to make the playoffs. But just based on how they've been playing, I'm trying to be realistic here. Them barely squeaking out a victory against the Panthers is not a good look. And the way they've been playing, Minnesota's not a scrub team. They're fighting for a playoff spot as well, and I don't see us beating that team. Chicago Bears have surprised a lot of teams this season. Justin Fields has been playing decent ball. I don't see us getting by them. It's not that I don't want to see the Packers win. I'm just being realistic here. And the Packers have shown me, again, the offense, you're right. The offense has come into its own. You're absolutely right. But wouldn't this offense be even better next year if we had a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. lining up out there?
Good name
You're
drop.
telling me that wouldn't be an even better offensive weapon out there for Jordan Love? Of course. Right now, I'm looking at a mock draft that was presented by Fan Nation, by Sports Illustrated, and right now it shows us as picking up J.C. Latham from the offensive tackle from Alabama. The offensive line is super important, but so are having weapons out there for the quarterback. And we have some weapons out there, but we still don't have that bona fide wide receiver one like we've talked about this entire season. I'm just being realistic here. I really am. Of course, I want to see the Packers get into the playoffs. I just don't see it happening.
Right. Okay, well, now we're going to move away from Packers and we're going to continue to look at the rest of the schedule. One of the games that I really want to highlight was last night, Monday night, Christmas, Baltimore versus the 49ers. I mean, Joe, I've just got one thing to say. Baltimore, Super Bowl bound. Baltimore just looks unbelievable right now, man. I mean, I don't know who's going to beat them. They are currently the team to beat.
You know, going into that game, everybody was talking about how much how good the 49ers have looked and how they're the number one team in the league and that they're the Super Bowl favorites and that Brock Purdy is the MVP leader, and that they have Christian McCaffrey who's right there with him as the MVP candidate. You know, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens just made a statement to the NFL that no, 49ers aren't all that. The Ravens are the Super Bowl favorites. They went into San Francisco and put a whooping on 49ers, beating them 33-19. It wasn't even a game. Brock Purdy threw what? I think he threw 4 interceptions in that game. And not only that, but when you watch the game, the Ravens defense was just swarming everywhere. It looked like they had like 17 guys out there on the field at one point. The Ravens put out a statement saying that we're not a team to mess with. And you're right. I think they are Super Bowl bound.
Correct. I mean, the Ravens just... Wait, let me start that over. Correct. Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson is looking unbelievable right now. It's like nobody could end up stopping them. I do have to pinpoint out that there was one play that he didn't necessarily look great, and it was right in the beginning of the game. Not necessarily his fault. Maybe his fault, not his fault, but the safety in the end zone where he trips over the ref and the ref ends up getting in the way. I mean, I sat there for a second and I ended up just going, wait, did that just really happen? Did that just really happen right there?
That ref was definitely in the wrong position. He needed to be lined up farther back. I mean, there's no chance a ref could be in that position at that time when the ball is lined up. What was it lined up? Was it lined up on like the 2 or the 1 or something like that? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like why is the ref not lined up behind the end zone at that point?
Correct.
There's no reason why he should be in the end zone.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when they're out there, it's as if they are another player out there. So I understand the ruling behind going with the intentional grounding call and calling it a safety in the end zone. But man, what a bummer. What a bummer way to just end up with a safety. But not like it made much of a difference, okay? Because Baltimore ended up going out there, and man, they ended up just putting the whooping on the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that was, like I said, it was a statement. We'll see how the 49ers are going to be able to bounce back from that. It was one of the worst games that we've seen 49ers play this season. Up against obviously a very, very strong opponent in the Ravens, but you would have thought they were going to put up a little bit more of a fight, considering everybody going into that game was talking about how this is the Super Bowl preview.
Right. Yeah, well, so even with that loss, the 49ers are still holding on to that number 1 seed. Trailing behind them, you've got the Philadelphia Eagles as well as the Detroit Lions. Number 4 seed is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 5 Dallas Cowboys. They unfortunately had a last-minute field goal against the Miami Dolphins. It actually was a pretty decent game. And then 6 seed Los Angeles Rams, 7 Seattle Seahawks. So that's currently our playoff picture as it stands in the NFC. So with this loss, though, from the 49ers, they do still have a remaining schedule where they're going to be playing against the Washington Commanders, and then they play the Los Angeles Rams in a divisional rivalry game. So they've got a lot to still play for. You know, I think that if they walk away with the win and by some reason Philly and Detroit end up losing these next 2 games, then I think that secures their spot for the number 1 seed. But if everything ends up playing out, I mean, just by looking at Week 17, Philadelphia has Arizona. They should end up winning that game. They're 10.5-point favorites in that game. And then in Week 18, Philadelphia plays the Giants. So by the looks of it, there's still a lot of competition for that number 1 seed in the NFC, and I believe that San Francisco is going to be fighting their way all the way through.
Yeah, but you look at the schedule, you look at the standings, Lions and the Eagles and the 49ers, they all have the same record right now. So obviously the 49ers hold the tiebreaker. They hold their destiny in their own hands. Went out and they got the number 1 seed. I totally expect the 49ers to do that. I expect them to bounce back. They're too good of a team not to. So I fully expect the 49ers to get that number 1 seed for the NFC.
Okay. So as of right now, the way that it stands, with the Niners holding that number 1 seed, Joe, how do you think? Do you think this playoff picture looks like it's going to stand in the NFC?
Yeah. Obviously the only thing up in the air right now is that it's the NFC South, where Bucks could still Falcons or Saints could still jump the Bucks for that for that 4th spot. As far as the wild cards go, Dallas has clinched their spot right there at the number 5. Unless something drastic happens to the Eagles and Dallas wins out, and they'll be able to jump into the 2, but I fully expect it to stay there. Rams, I think they're going to be able to sneak in. I potentially see the Minnesota Vikings getting in there as well and jumping over the Seahawks. I don't think the Seahawks are that good of a football team, to be honest with you. And I could fully see the Vikings sneaking in. But other than that, it looks pretty solidified in my eyes.
Yeah, that's the way I'm seeing it as well. Okay, and then we can move over to the AFC. So Baltimore's holding on to that number 1 seed. Miami's the number 2. Kansas City's the number 3. Jacksonville at 4. Browns at 5. Bills at 6. And Indianapolis at 7. Do you see anything changing here?
I see potentially, we talked about it earlier in the episode, I think that the Bills could potentially take that AFC East away from Miami and drop the Miami down to a wild card spot. But outside of that, Baltimore has the AFC North pretty much wrapped up. I think that Kansas City's playing some pretty terrible ball right now, but I don't see. I mean, it would take something drastic for them to lose because Raiders are still 2 games back, so I don't see anything like that happening. But so yeah, pretty solid. I could definitely see the Bills though taking that AFC East crown from Miami though.
Yeah. Besides watching my Packers over here play, I think I'm getting pretty excited to see what that Week 18 game is going to look like.
It's going to be fun, that's for sure. And we were talking also before we end this episode, we were talking earlier about Rookie of the Year, and I just want to correct myself on one thing, saying that Puka is a solid lock for that Rookie of the Year. I totally forgot about CJ Stroud. He's up there. He's probably the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year at this point, but Puka is going to be definitely a close second place.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to consider is that CJ Stroud is dealing with that injury, which could end up playing an effect for that Rookie of the Year award, whereas Puka is continuing to play strong and he's probably going to continue to play strong all the way through to the end. So that could end up being more favorable towards Puka than CJ Stroud. But no discredit towards CJ Stroud because, man, he really has had a great year.
For sure.
Okay. Well, with that, that does it for this episode. So thank you all again so much for joining us. We truly appreciate it. And again, if you haven't yet, please find and follow us on all our social media pages right down in this little area. You can find us at the WCC Grid Talk, wherever on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and newly added Discord. Please go ahead and join the Discord account where you can find all new information, and it'll be anything and everything football related. So we always will root for our Packers, and we may not like the cold, but certainly still rep the green and gold. Go Pack Go, and we hope you all have a great week. Take care.